folks, my name is Jen, and today I'm going to talk to you about the books that I read in July. So for the course of July, I read 9 books. These were kind of a variety overall. I have been kind of really bad this year of keeping track of all of the special books. Am I sticking to my seasonal TBR? Did I stick with reading the set books that I wanted to read? So I'll try to keep track of that. One question you might ask is, hey, in July, did you read any classics any classics? Because you wanted to read a classic month. Yes, I did actually. I read 2 classics in July. So let's just quickly talk about both of those first. They were both rereads. The first of which was Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. This is the classic swashbuckling tale of young Jim Hawkins, whose family owns the Admiral Benbow Inn. One day a mysterious old sailor, or sea dog rather is what they call him most of the time, shows up at the inn and stays for a while, and then over time, subsequently, and then events kind of occur, and the man ends up dying and leaving behind a mysterious map that then comes into Jim's hands, and then so to this Squire Trelawney, Dr. Livesey, and the trip is secured to go find this island and seek out the treasure that is reportedly hidden there. And they have to get a crew, and amongst the crew is another mysterious, jovial sailor called Long John Silver. And we all know who Long John Silver is, but none of them knew his true character when they started out. Anyway, Treasure Island, I guess it could be considered partially a coming-of-age story. I think Jim's supposed to be maybe between the ages of 11 and 13 is what I'm thinking his age might supposed to be. So I guess you could consider it a coming-of-age, coming into his own, going out on this adventure on the high seas, and having to fight and whatnot. But honestly, most of the story is just a swashbuckling adventure. I know that the author wrote it very much with younger kids in mind, especially young boys. I believe he kind of basically wrote this down for his stepson, who became one of his best friends, and they also wrote some books together later on. So I know that this very much is supposed to appeal to the younger person, but I think anyone can get into Treasure Island. I think this is one of the most accessible classics that there is out there. I know I've said that before when I've talked about reading this. This not that long of a book. My particular copy I also really love. It's an Educator Classic Library from the 70s. And I really like it because it has all these footnotes in it, and then in the back there's information about the golden age of piracy, information about the author, and a diagram of a ship and everything. Just some nice background information. And it's just a very interesting story. I will say you have to take different parts of it with a grain of salt because it's very much of its time, and again, it's very, I think, geared towards a younger reader, so some things feel kind of slightly implausible, I guess, or kind of crazy, but at the same time, it is just really fun. It's, like I said, a swashbuckling adventure, full of secrets and piracy and fighting and sailing, searching for treasure, loyalty and backstabbing and friendship, and just very interesting overall, interesting characters, even if a couple of them are a little more wooden. But a lot of fun. Some of the language in here is a little bit hard. There are footnotes on how to translate some of the slang and stuff like that. But I have always found it to be like a cool little addition to the story is how the sailors speak, especially like the pirates themselves. And it seems like they kind of talk in that vernacular because Stevenson would go hang out by the docks and he would listen to people talk, and he kind of like put their speech patterns into the book, which I always kind of like that a little bit when colloquialisms or certain speech patterns and ways people talk are put into books. Another example I can think of that really does that is like Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, for example, which I will say I can understand that sometimes actually reading stuff like that, it can be a little bit hard, but if you try to read stuff out loud to yourself a little bit, I think you get your brain into the flow of everything a little bit more because you're actually hearing the words said out loud, and then you can kind of get your brain to be like, oh, right, okay, that's how that's pronounced, and that's what they're actually saying. But yeah, I like that part. Like I said, it's very accessible, it's very exciting, there's a lot going on. I'd say this is a fairly fast-paced book overall, I think. I think one of my favorite characters in this book is probably Ben Gunn. He is a wacky character, and I don't know, sometimes in novels I end up really enjoying the wacky or the strange characters, the ones that are like really out there, because they're very entertaining, but there also is like interesting layers to them too. Anyway, really enjoyed my reread of this. This was not on my list for the summer really, but I was feeling in the mood for a summary read, what I would define as a summary read, and I think reading about pirates on the high seas searching for treasure on a tropical island definitely fits in the summer kind of vibe. So yeah, I'm glad I picked this up again. And what did I give this? I gave this 4 stars. And the other classic I read in July was also a reread, and that was The Fellowship of the Ring by Tolkien. This, of course, is the first book in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, following Frodo Baggins as he is tasked with being the ring bearer. Basically, this ring of great power that the big baddie of Middle-earth wants desperately, and he is tasked with this ring to destroy it, and a fellowship of 9 people is brought together to kind of help along the journey. Although most of the book honestly is the setup of the adventures, giving some background of the Shire life and Bilbo, who you will have met if you read The Hobbit, and his nephew, or rather cousin, sort of, Frodo, and their friends, and, you know, time passing by kind of slowly and getting to the point of the journey itself to Rivendell where the elves live, and then the forming of the Fellowship and their journey across everything. I was honestly feeling kind of really down, basically. Just having a time. I'm feeling pretty upset with the way everything is working currently. I know that other people are probably struggling a lot more, but I'm honestly, within a day, I feel like I move between several emotions over the course of the day, most of them being anger and dread, being the most prevalent. But I wanted to read something that felt hopeful. So in that case, I would usually go with rereading something And this was what I chose to reread. I wanted to disappear into a world where evil does not win, and people come together and change the course of everything and battle against evil, and there's a lot of love and loyalty and friendship and valor, and the men in here are just so, like, not in the toxic masculinity vein. Like, they care about each other and they're not afraid to show it, and they get scared or sad and they're not afraid to cry in front of each other or to grieve or to show that they are scared, but they still do what they need to do at the end of the day. And yeah, I just really like that, and I really like the characters overall in here. I think the characters are the best part of this story. I mean, the plot is interesting, of course, and the world is also very, like, fleshed out and detailed and interesting, but it's the characters that make the book. To be honest, I have talked shit about Boromir before, and I still feel on the fence about him overall, even on this reading. But I love Aragorn, son of Arathorn. He is a king among men. Gandalf, I actually like Gandalf a lot more on this reading. Frodo is, of course, lovely Frodo, and Sam, loyal Sam, the cinnamon roll, who, I am sorry, they are in love with each other, and I will not hear otherwise. Good night. Merry and Pippin, the two ridiculous chuckle fucks that I love them. I want to see them do whatever, anytime. And, of course, Legolas the elf and Gimli the dwarf, who start out as enemies and become best bros, and I fucking love their friendship. I'm actually in the midst of Two Towers right now, a reread of that, and I could read a whole book just following their friendship and, like, adventures with the two of them, because I love them. Like, they're so funny and I love them together. It's just great. But yeah, anyway, I really loved rereading this, and I'm really loving my reread of everything. Anyway, it was definitely comforting to come back to this world and kind of live in it a little bit and look at the quotes and stuff like that. I know everybody's kind of bandied the quotes around a lot over the past couple of months, so I probably won't repeat any of them because I'm sure you've seen the same ones all over the place. But I love this, and I'm really glad that last year I finally got around to actually reading this series, because I really love it, and I really love revisiting it, and now a big fan of it. And I will say this time around, last time, while I did read the series, I skipped all of the songs because I was like, I can't deal with this. I could not deal with the songs. This time around, I have read all of the songs. I've read the songs in here. Whatever came up in Two Towers, I've read those. So, yeah, this time around, I'm also reading the songs, and they're alright. They're alright. I'm not a super big fan. I guess I would be more a fan of them if I heard them being sung and heard, like, the music that goes along with them or whatever. I'd probably like them a little bit more then. But yeah, I just really love this, and I knew I was going to be rereading this series again. I just didn't think I'd be rereading it so soon after reading it for the first time. But I'm glad that I'm taking the time to reread it again. And I feel like some point this year another watch is probably going to be due of the movies. Maybe this time I'll do the extended versions, but yeah, love revisiting this. This was also a 4-star, although I don't know, the more I think about it, it might get bumped up to a 5, but I don't know. Yeah, I just love this book, and I mean, you can't go wrong with classic fantasy. So, what other things am I supposed to read? So, a classic a month and a nonfiction a month. Well, I actually finished reading 2 nonfictions. in July. So let's talk about those. The first of which is actually, it's just one that I finished in July, because it's actually a book that I've been working my way through since, what was it, April or May, I guess. And that is The Artist's Way, A Spiritual Path to Higher Creativity by Julia Cameron. I think I talked about acquiring this book and having some thoughts about it overall. Initially when I first started like going through this and reading this. This is supposed to be a course in discovering and recovering your creative self. And so it's basically sworn by so many people, like Elizabeth Gilbert, for example, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. Anne Lamott, who I forget what she has done, but I feel like she wrote one of the textbooks that I used in college. Martin Scorsese, of course, the director. A bunch of other people. I have heard a couple of other people, famous people, say that they had some good work through this book. I have a friend who had gone through this book, or at least part of this book. So I ended up, deciding what the hell, why not? It's not like I'm particularly stuck in writing or anything, but I do have an issue sometime of motivation, where I'm really into a project, I'm pounding out a lot of material, and then I don't know, the shine comes off the stone a little bit, I guess, and progress slows down, or I get to a point where I don't know where to go next, and then just, progress just kind of completely drops off, and I stop writing, or I stop writing as much, or I take long breaks and things don't get finished, or they don't get finished for a long time, and it's a problem. Like right now, I've got 3 active projects, or projects I should be active in, and what am I doing? Coming up with more ideas that I'm writing notes about in my phone. Like, come on now. Yeah, basically, this book is supposed to help you get back to, like, your creative side. Julia Cameron is, like, an author, not only of these books, but she's also done, like, other works, like screenwriting and plays and stuff like that. And her brother is actually James Cameron, the, like, Titanic and Avatar director. So, so I was like, alright, let's give it a go. I'd heard things about this book. I heard that a couple of chapters were a little bit rough if you are not religious. So I was aware of that. And ultimately with this, I will say, I can see why a lot of people would find this to be very helpful. There are a lot of exercises in here that I think can help kind of inspire creativity, or really get you to get back to a place of working creatively. One of the things is daily writing 3 pages a day, kind of like stream of consciousness sort of thing. And I do think, and I have heard more than one place before, writing advice, and also when I was in school, that like writing every day is a good idea. It at least gets the creative juices flowing a little bit, and maybe that will produce an idea that you can take into something else, or maybe it can help you figure out something, or maybe it's just enough to get you writing and doing something, and then makes you feel motivated to go to like your actual projects, or to start your day, or whatever. For a while there, off and on over the years, I started in college and continued off and on trying to write from prompts for 10 minutes a day. And it wouldn't produce like a ton of stuff, but it would produce at least something. The writing 3 pages was kind of a challenge, and it finally got to the point partway through this, because it's like 12 weeks that you were supposed to work through this book, and you read like the chapter for that week, and then there's exercises and things you're supposed to do, and then your tasks for the week that you're supposed to get done, and one of them is your daily daily writing, and then you're supposed to check in at the end of the week, and did you do your daily writing? Did you do like these other tasks that were put before you? And after a while, it took me a long time throughout the weeks. I don't think I actually really started getting into the stream of consciousness, like actual stream of consciousness, without thinking too much about it. I don't think I actually started doing that until about week 7 or 8, I want to say. And I think that what really helped me was getting out of the mindset that they had to be full pages. Like full prose pages of writing, because I realized what is a better stream of consciousness thing for me. How do I more like write stream of consciousness? Well, it's usually poetry. While sometimes things are planned out, or especially if I'm working in a particular form or focusing on like a rhyming kind of thing, those will be more planned. But for the most part, like a lot of the times with poems, when I just feel they need to get out of me, it does end up being kind of more stream of conscious. So writing in that way, just writing with that kind of form, like that free verse kind of form of maybe not filling the entire page with it, but just going to where and ending the line where it feels like it should end, like that kind of thing. I operated more in that, and I probably didn't technically do it the correct way, but that's just was better for me overall to do that method. I think that the writing every day was helpful. I can say that ever since getting out of it, I have not really kept up with that so much, to be honest, but I did start it yesterday again, and I'm gonna try to get back into writing a little bit every day, because I think that was kind of like at least something nice that I could do for myself. Some of the tasks were alright. They were creative things, and I didn't always do the creative things. I did do a lot of like lists and things like that. Like there's a lot of things about like figuring out how did people treat you and your dreams and the things that you want to do in the past. It's very like psychological kind of self-help stuff. And kind of working that out, and how did that feel when people encouraged you or discouraged you or whatever. And you know, it was just very much like, I think some of that breakdown, or some of that getting to the root of who feels what about what and how you feel about others, and breaking down your dreams and the things that you want to do or you would do if you had the time or the money or whatever. I think all of that is pretty helpful. I think getting back to this idea of who you were creatively as a child before people started discouraging you, maybe, I feel like that was pretty helpful. Because I think ultimately having more of that introspection and reflecting on your past can probably help you get to the root of maybe what your issues are now. Like, I think that is a pretty helpful thing overall, because most people, when you react in certain ways or you have visceral reactions to things, it usually is based in something that happened, and oftentimes it's something that happened in your formative years. So it is kind of interesting to try to find like a breakdown and stuff like that. But I will say a couple of things that I did not like about this book. So those were the things that I did like, but a lot of the things about this book and this program I didn't like. And one of them had to do with some of the tasks and some of the breakdown. Just because it felt like it was really gearing towards very specific things. And I feel like it could have been a little more open, and could have been worded a little more openly, or could have had, I don't know, because the thing about this book is it's really focusing in on getting writers or creative people in general unstuck. It's not just for writers, although a lot of things have to do with writing, but it's also like art, dance, acting, directing, whatever the hell. You know, if you're a creative person, it's the things that you want to do that you haven't been able to do. So I found that some of the breakdown of let's get to the place of who made you feel like shit about what you wanted to do, I felt like it was very maybe a little too specific. Like, it was really focusing in on people having shitty parents. Like, it really was focused in on people having shitty parents and shitty situation and shitty friends and shitty, it was like really focused in on that. And for the most part, I didn't find those particular things that helpful, or certain questions you were supposed to answer, a certain task or whatever, wasn't as helpful to me specifically. And I know this is coming from me specifically, and it probably is not the same for everybody. But in my experience growing up, and this is something I actually just talked to my therapist about, but like in my experience growing up, like the two people in my family who would encourage me more than anything in whatever I wanted to do, especially with like creative stuff and writing, were my parents. Like, my parents are both very like big supporters of me going for it and doing the things that I want to do, and they are really very supportive of my writing and my creativity overall, and they're always proud of me, which I am totally aware that not everybody has that, so this would like work for a lot of people in that vein, but I didn't find it as helpful because I had that support system from them. And my friends, a lot of us are creative people. A whole bunch of my friends I was friends with in the same program at school, like everybody's really supportive of each other. Really think I have any unsupportive friends. If I did, we wouldn't be friends anymore, honestly. But I will say, like, extended family, if we get out into the extended family territory, you get a little more discouragement. And even then, it's not so much, in some cases, it's very active discouragement. In other cases, it's not really discouragement, but it's more just kind of mocking of the things that you find important or the things that you want to accomplish. Like that kind of thing. But then again, in extended family, I also have people that are very much like, just get it, So it's kind of a mixed bag. But yeah, that was just one of those things where it was like, it just felt like it was a little too specific in trying to get at the root of people's problems. And I felt like it didn't have to be that specific in a lot of cases, or maybe it could have had more expanded questions or expanded things that you were supposed to answer or figure out in that case. And another thing that I really had issues were, as I'm talking about that, but the part of kind of privilege in this work, I felt like a lot of this book is, and this is the 25th anniversary edition, so this book was actually first published, let me see, when was it first published? 1992. And I think in some ways it has dated itself quite a bit. In some of the tasks or some of the references and things in here, it very much kind of dated. And some of that also is the more privileged way of talking about things, the way that the author talks about different things she wants you to do, different activities. At one point, you're supposed to purge like your closet, and you're supposed to do whole things like that, and I'm like, I'm not fucking Marie Kondoing my life right now. I absolutely refuse to do that. Like, as it is, a lot of the clothes that I have are starting to fall apart because I wear them too much. So honestly, I'm more in the need of needing to take my little ass over to the thrift store and get more clothes, as opposed to just fucking tossing a whole bunch of shit. Like, that's just kind of where I'm at in my life right now. But a lot of it was just like purging your closet, or list your different favorite types of cars, or list your blah blah blah. And it's like, favorite types of cars, okay, most of them are cars I can't afford, ever. It was just a lot of things that she expected you to do, or ways she expected you to spend your time, or different tasks that she wanted. A lot of it seemed like it needed you to be spending a lot more of your time and money doing these very specific things, and so I don't think that a lot of this is accessible for a lot of people. I feel like this was written for very specific people in mind, and quite honestly, it kind of felt like this is leaning towards middle-aged people with boring lives who are very upset with where they are in life and want to get back to that creativity they had when they were small before their parents killed it. Like that just feels like where this book is kind of leaning and is geared towards a very specific set of people. And in that way, I guess it also feels like it dates it just because of how have another psychological book that is from the 80s, and it kind of feels along the same vibe as some of this book. Like there's a very specific vibe that I don't really know how to describe properly, but this it, it's just a little bit dated, and yeah, like I said, a lot of the advice and things are really coming from a specific place that feels just a little bit like not really understanding everybody's lives and what they can and cannot afford to do or spend their time on. I will say another thing about this book is it is probably a little bit hard for someone who is deconstructing from religion, whether you have deconstructed, you're in the process of deconstructing, or you are kind of where I'm at right now, where I've already like been through the process of deconstructing for years, and now because of just the way things are currently, you're feeling really hostile towards a lot of organized religion, and just like a knee-jerk reaction. It was really hard to get through some things. There's like a specific chapter that was really digging into like the religious stuff, and she she says within the opening parts of this book that like she's gonna call it God, but you can call it whatever you want. It's just basically like a spiritual thing, and she keeps saying that here and there that, oh, I don't mean it like that, but it's just, but a lot of the wording that is throughout here does, some things do feel a little bit more like the woo-woo kind of like spiritual edge of things, and then other things feel very rooted in Christianity. And yeah, that was just a lot, especially with how I have been feeling with everything in this place this year currently. Was not in my headspace, not good in my headspace. Basically felt really antagonistic towards a lot of things, and I think that I've flipped through what I wrote over the course of this, and you can tell I was feeling really feisty and antagonistic throughout some of the things, just based on what I was saying in my daily writing or how I was answering certain tasks and questions and things. So I will say, I mean, if you are in a good place in your spiritual path, whether that be whatever it may be, or if you are chill with whatever exists in the universe, and you just need that help with creativity, I'm sure this will be helpful or at least palatable. If you are deconstructing or angry at religion, this is going to be a struggle, a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like this, I can see where this is helpful, but for me personally, I feel like it didn't really do that much for my writing overall. Sure, I was writing every day, but I didn't really produce anything creatively. I actually stopped writing as much in the project that I was working on before I started writing this. It had the opposite effect, which was very unhelpful. So yeah, didn't work for me, but honestly, I think this just confirms for me again that I am not the self-help girly. This is not me. I wasn't sure how this is going to be, but because I'd heard so many people talk it up or say that it ended up being helpful, I figured, well, might as well give it a go. And I've never done anything like this before, and I've missed kind of like school type writing thing. But yeah, not for me at all. And just, yeah, kind of confirmed for me that this kind of self-help stuff is not up my alley. I gave this 3 stars. Then we can talk about the nonfiction book that I read that I actually really loved. So recently I ended up getting a couple more Kurt Vonnegut books. I just really, really, really wanted to read some Vonnegut, and I ended up grabbing A Man Without a Country, which is basically a collection of, I guess they're just short little essays or like pieces of essays that are introspective and reflective and kind of go run the gambit of talking about like politics and life and art and sex and America, living in America. Little bits of history and discussions of like classism and racism and the war, the after effects of war, all of this. And wow, you guys, I loved this. I actually recognized one of these essays in here. There's one that he has about writing, is a lesson in creative writing, and what was really funny was I recognized the diagrams and some of the language from it as being part of, I think, a video, like lecture or speech that I saw online. It's actually somewhere on YouTube, and if I remember, editing me of the future, I'll try to find it and put like a link to it down below so you can see what I'm talking about. But it just kind of cracked me up. This is randomly in here. A lot of this is so funny. And not only is it so funny, but a lot of it just feels really relevant to now. And this was written in like 2005. And it's crazy that so many things that were so relevant then are still so. It's just so funny that so many issues or things he was talking about are either coming to fruition now or are just still so relevant, in some ways worse. Things are worse than they were in some regards, which is crazy. But I loved this. I ended up, I was sitting on the couch and my husband was sitting next to me. He was like watching or playing games or whatever, and I was reading this. I read this in one sitting. And I was just like, I just kept stopping and reading quotes to him and reading things. And I was like, because it's just so quotable, and there's so many things that I loved in here. So many things that I went through, and I like, the person who owned this before me wrote a lot of notes and underlined things. I also, like, I went through and highlighted a bunch of stuff. Yeah, it just had a lot of things that I just felt in my bones. I think that, let me see, are there any quotes I want to share with you right now? Just give you a taste of some of this. Humor is an almost physiological response to fear. Freud said that humor is a response to frustration, one of several. A dog, he said, when he can't get out of a gate, will scratch and start digging and speak and making meaningless gestures, perhaps growling or whatever, to deal with frustration or surprise or fear. And a great deal of laughter is induced by fear. Here's another one. Socialism is no more an evil word than Christianity. Socialism is no more prescribed Joseph Stalin and his secret police and shuttered churches than Christianity prescribed the Spanish Inquisition. Christianity and socialism alike, in fact, prescribe a society dedicated to the proposition that all men, women, and children are created equal and shall not starve. The arts are not a way to make a living. They are a very human way of making life more bearable. Practicing an art, no matter how well or badly, is a way to make your soul grow, for heaven's sake. Sing in the shower, dance to the radio, tell stories, write a poem to a friend, even a lousy poem. Do it as well as you possibly can. You will get an enormous reward. You will have created something. There's a reason we recognize Hamlet as a masterpiece. It's that Shakespeare told us the truth, and people so rarely tell us the truth in this rise and fall. The truth is, we know so little about life, we don't really know what the good news is and what the bad news is. Here's one that, hit hard. We have contraptions like computers that cheat you out of becoming. Bill Gates says, wait till you can see what your computer can become. But it's you who should be doing the becoming, not the damn fool computer. What you can become is the miracle you were born to be through the work that you do. That one hit real fucking hard because of everything going on with AI right now. It was a lot. Religion and everything, and talking about being human, a good person. He was very much a humanist. And then there's especially this one quote of his that is my absolute favorite. We are on earth to fart around. Don't let anybody tell you any different. Yeah, I absolutely loved this, and I think that this now might have surpassed God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater. This might now be my favorite work of his. This random collection of essays and things. I absolutely loved it. I think everyone should read this. Yeah, I adored this book, and he is honestly quickly rising in the ranks of my favorite authors. I love his writing so much. I gave this 5 stars. Now, what else? My other challenge, my band reading challenge. Where was I with that last month? I read a couple of chapters in a couple of the books, but I did not actually complete any of them, so oops. Very far behind in that. I'm going to try to catch up. But what other books did I end up reading? Welp, I ended up reading 3 mysteries, and they were all more of the Lady Hardcastle series. So I read An Act of Foul Play, A Fire at the Exhibition, and An Assassination on the Agenda. And I just got the latest book. I just ordered it, and it should be here this weekend, so yay! So let's talk briefly about these, because you've already heard me talk ad nauseum about the Lady Hardcastle series, so I'll try to go quick through these ones. First up was An Act of Foul Play, and this is where Lady Hardcastle and her lady's maid and all-around good chum, Florence Armstrong, they are out with a bunch of other friends, out on the town, going to the theater for Lady Hardcastle's birthday. And when the second act of the play opens, an actor is on the stage stabbed to death. So they end up going actually undercover into the theater scene to try to get to know the other members of the theater company and try to figure out who did this. I really liked this. I liked the bits of undercover work that they did. I also really loved the behind the scenes look at the theater. I have always kind of loved the theater. I've always loved going to the theater to see musicals and plays put on. We went fairly frequently, I'd say, when I was growing up, because our local theater, there was always these plays that were put on every summer from when I was a kid till they're still going on now, put on by local community children in the area, from basically kindergarten age through high school into college and stuff like that. And there's also the arts are very much a big thing in the town that I grew up in. Everybody's really appreciative of them because of our lovely music hall, and that's where those plays, and there'd be other plays there'd be other events and things like that. So I always really loved going to those, and I loved when we go different places and see other productions here and there, because my parents also enjoy going to see stage productions. Especially my mom and me, we really love that. We really love going to see musicals and stuff. So I've always kind of loved that atmosphere and the vibe and just being able to go see shows. And here and there, I've also kind of been involved in stuff, although I'm very much not an onstage person. I've done it a couple of times. I did not enjoy it that much. I much prefer to be backstage person. I've helped make props before. I've been like a costumes mistress in a production before. I very much prefer the behind the scenes work, and I also love that world too. The ability of getting together with a determined group of people and pulling off magic. It's just great. So I really loved this. I loved getting a look at the background stuff. Honestly, I would have loved it even more if there were even more behind the scenes stuff, but what there was, I really enjoyed. I really liked that just being a part of this book, and I also really liked that in this book we meet more of Flo's family. We meet her twin, Gwen, who is fantastic, and I hope she shows up in future books again because I loved her. This was 5 stars. This book was A Fire at the Exhibition, which was really great. Flo and Lady Hardcastle end up going to the local art exhibition where a whole bunch of the local area artists or just townspeople who have produced different art pieces. There's also their rich friends, the Farley Strouds, have donated a couple of pieces, and they're all at the exhibition, and the exhibition is also to show off this massive, like, omnibus of Shakespearean works that this eccentric dude has kind of ordered and had made. It's gorgeous, but also obnoxious. And the unthinkable happens at the exhibition. All of a sudden, a fire breaks out, and when everyone gets back inside, they realize that this giant Shakespeare omnibus that costs a lot of money has been stolen, and a couple other pieces. The Farley Strouds pieces have also been stolen. So Flo and Lady Armstrong kind of get involved in trying to solve what happened at the exhibition, and also trying to locate the omnibus as well as locate these pieces for their friends, because one of them at least was worth a lot of money and it could save their friends from ruin. I loved that. I will say things did drag a little bit more in this one for me, just because it felt like they spent so much time just doing whatever instead of actually looking for helpful clues that I was like, girls, come on now. But I will say the conclusion was exactly what I was hoping for and exactly what I suspected might have happened. So I was like, yes, I guessed right. But yeah, there was, I don't want to spoil anything, so I won't, but there was a part where I was like, is this where this book is going? And I got so excited about it. So did like the conclusion overall. This was 5 stars. And then I also read An Assassination on the Agenda, which I think might now be my favorite of these entirely. I felt like this was the best one. So basically, Lady Hardcastle and Flo are undercover again to stop an assassination plot. So this is 1912. This is a couple of years before World War I actually starts, due to an assassination of the Austro-Hungarian and our prince, emperor, right? And the empress. Yeah, so this was the spark that ignited World War I. We're a couple of years off from that, but danger is coming for Austro-Hungarians coming to England for an event. So they're basically undercover to foil an assassination plot. I really like this. It has a lot of like bureaucracy crap and political stuff, but also it's really showing them at work, not just doing their usual thing. They are like active for the majority of this. They are constantly doing stuff. They are dealing with things. They are going undercover in a couple of different ways. They're nosing about. They're talking to all these. We're getting looks at people we've heard about before, people we've glimpsed a little bit. We're also getting to know other people like in their previous lives, back when they were like doing a lot of different work and stuff like that. So it's like you're learning more about them, you're learning more about people, you're seeing how the country and the world is kind of gearing up. Like every day people are like going about their business, but they are worrying because things seem like they are edging closer and closer to the world at war, which of course is exactly what was happening. But I really loved this. I loved the undercover work. I loved how exciting it was. I loved all of the action, and the humor in here, on point as usual. I love their eccentricities, and I really loved this. I think this was the best one so far, and I just really enjoyed it, and I'm really interested to see where the series will go as the world edges closer to World War One. So this is 5 stars too. Then I have 2 books left that I have to talk about. I think we'll talk about the one that I didn't like first. And this is disappointing to say, but it was The Lady Who Liked Clean Restrooms by J.P. Donleavy. Okay, the lighting changed a little bit. Sorry. I had to go eat dinner. Anyway, where were we? Right. I was gonna start trashing a book. Sort of. A little bit. The Lady Who Liked Clean Restrooms. Honestly, how do I describe this book? It is a novella about a lady. Her name is Jocelyn Guinevere Marchantier Jones. She lives in Scarsdale. Her husband cheats on her, basically. And she kind of goes off the rails because her husband has cheated on her and has kind of basically moved in with like his assistant or whatever, and she's left in her big rambling house, and eventually she ends up her money is all like depleting and stuff trying to keep up with this place, and she ends up having to go to like New York City and live in like these crappy apartments and stuff like that. And her kids don't want anything to do with her because they think she's lost her mind, and they're hanging out with their dad, which is something I can't fully fathom, because like even if I thought that one of my parents was going crazy because of something the other parent had done, like the parent that cheated is the parent that I'm gonna fucking disown. Like, what? Basically everyone in this book is an asshole. Just all around full of super flawed human beings. And I have to say that that is something that I do not usually have a good time with, is pieces of media that closely follow incredibly flawed human beings, because I just have a hard time with it. Like, there's a difference between being incredibly flawed and being assholes. It's a little bit of a difference, and I just have a hard time with some of those things where people are actually moving along from just plainly flawed into asshole territory. It's why I don't have a good time watching shows like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia or Seinfeld or something. When all of the characters are terrible people, I can't fathom spending my time watching their shenanigans. If I can't find someone to root for in the bunch, I don't want anything the fuck to do with it. So books like this are really kind of hard for me to get into and connect with and get through, because if it's just a bunch of shitheads, I feel like I'm wasting my time. There are so many more books out there that I could read than wasting my time learning about the lives of shitty assholes. That's kind of partially how I felt about this a little bit. Also, it's extremely melancholic overall, which is another thing that I honestly have a harder time with. I can read something that is bittersweet, but I have a hard time with books that are largely, like, the whole vibe of the book is melancholy. I don't usually have such a good time with that either. And I guess it could be argued that there are humorous pieces in here, because there are humorous bits and pieces, although I honestly did not find that many of them, and the ones that I did find, like, there's one part in particular. Most everything else, especially things that I think were supposed to be funny, or it seemed like maybe that was supposed to be found as humorous. I didn't particularly find to be humorous. But this one point is the one thing that I think made me audibly react, like, laugh, and be like, oh boy. It's this one part in this book. She has, like, a friend, sort of, that came by and is, like, kind of propositioning her, and she's like, well, I guess you're just gonna have to pay me, and he gets really uncomfortable with that. He's just talking to her like, I can't believe you're talking like a sex worker right now, and she's like, well, I'm not spending my time with you unless I'm getting paid, like, bro, I gotta survive, like, that kind of thing. And so they're having this whole conversation, and he's just like, no, 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 go in the bedroom, it'll be fine. He's like trying to convince her, like, they're gonna do stuff, but he wants it for free because paying her would be degrading, but just getting her for a free fuck is not somehow. I don't. The logic. But anyway, this one section he says, come on, look at it. There it is, waiting all this time, hard as a rock, all full 6.5 inches. Come on, give the boy a treat. Hey, what the fuck are you laughing at? She says, you? Those are the most original words I've ever heard you say. Be a good boy. Put it back in your pants and go ask your wife to give the boy a treat. And I won't scream blue, pink, and red murder for help through these paper-thin walls and have my widow acquaintance and about 20 other nosy people wondering why I'm being molested and what your car is doing parked outside, so they call the police. And he says, hey, I got friends there. Don't worry. Come on, let's go into the bedroom. I'll bet you'll love it. Stay right where you are. And he goes, holy Jesus Christ almighty, that's a goddamn real gun you got there. You're damn right it is. Hey, Jocelyn, no kidding. Put it away. Guns can go off. You put your prick back in your pants and get out of here, because I verily assure you that it is going to go off unless you do. And that whole exchange I found to be really funny, but, yeah, other than that, not much humor did I find in here. Just very bizarre. And I mean, that's a shame, but I kind of knew that this one was going to be maybe a hit or a miss, because bizarre books tend to be a hit or a miss with me. Like, sometimes I will read a bizarre book and I'll be like, this is the worst trash I've ever read in my life. And other times I will read a bizarre book and I'll be like, this is the most fantastic thing. And on some occasions, it's like, even if I don't feel like this is the greatest thing and I'm going to read this so many times, I will still find something to think about the book, or it just struck me as one of the weirdest things I've ever read, and it made some kind of impression on me. Like, for example, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, or whatever, that I read last year. Very weird book. It was a struggle for part of it, because I wasn't sure what was going on, but by the end of it, I actually really liked it. Like, I actually had really enjoyed the book. Even if it's not one that becomes a book that I reread frequently, I know at some point along the way I will end up revisiting it. And it was a very bizarre but interesting little book. This does not go on that list. This one is not going to stay in my hands for very long. I can tell you that. It's not just the melancholy, it's not just that I didn't find it that funny. It was also just a miss for me overall on the bizarre point, and some of that has to do with, like I said, the amount of shitty people that are involved. Some of it has to do with the overall melancholic vibe throughout. But then other parts that I didn't particularly enjoy about it. Whereas this being, unfortunately, another one of those instances of men writing women and sucking at it. The way the author has chosen to write about this woman, just, it did not feel so much like one of those, like, she walks up and strips in front of the mirror and stares at her breasts and has a soliloquy about her breasts for a while in front of the mirror. Like, most of the time, I don't think women do that. I mean, some women maybe do that. I can say as a woman who has had self-esteem issues off and on throughout my life, I try not to spend that much time looking at my body in front of the mirror. Just saying. I'm sure there are women that feel real confident and stand naked in front of the mirror and go, sexy. Go for it, girl. Like, but I am not one of those. It's not so much along those lines, like that kind of thing, or like really going on and on about how much they love dick or whatever like that. It's not one of those male written books or like obsessing over their breasts. This one, she talks about masturbating a lot in here. And you know, everybody's gotta get their, I mean, well, maybe not everybody, but most people gotta get their jollies however they gotta get their jollies. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing to put that in a book, but it's just, it felt very much like a male written book. The way that this was discussed, or the obsession over it, it just kind of felt. He also at one point in here talks about like desiring to be raped, and it was just I just very clearly another one of those instances of a dude writing women and not fucking understanding women at all. Yeah, so that was another part of this, and I think my main problem though, my main issue with this book overall, which was unfortunate that I did not realize before I got this, it is a stream of consciousness book. I historically do not do well with stream of consciousness books. I have a hard time reading them, understanding them, enjoying them. It is just not something that I like. Overall, I find them to be incredibly confusing to follow. I do not have a good time reading them because of how confusing they are, because a lot of the times it feels like everything's almost like a run-on sentence, and that drives me bonkers a lot of the times. And that is largely what this was, is a lot of conversations and a lot of like moments, but flashbacks, but thoughts, but it goes all over the place, and it was honestly incredibly confusing to read. It did not take me very long to get through it, but it felt like a slog. Even though I read this in like 2 sittings, I want to say, it felt like a fucking slog to get through it. The funny thing is, I looked up reviews about this book online afterwards, because I was like, what are other people saying about this? And I saw that there is a lot of people out there that agree with me about not liking this book or not getting this book or whatever. And there's a lot of people who are like, this is the funniest shit I've ever read. And I'm like, I'm happy for you that this is the funniest shit you've ever read. This is not even close to being the least funniest shit I've read, is how unfunny most of this book is. It is a novella. It is a bizarre book because it is so short and it was so bizarre. That is why I did not end up DNFing this. I was very close to it a couple of times, but I decided to slog through anyway because I figure, well, maybe there will be a payoff to this. There was, through a series of circumstances, I suppose, some sort of payoff, but not really payoff. I will say, if you're particularly triggered about things, such as discussions of rape or suicide and stuff like that, definitely check some stuff, because that's in here a lot. Yeah, very overall disappointed with this book. And I guess, I mean, when I originally found this at wherever I was that the bookshop in Connecticut, I think, the Book Barn, I think I was at the Book Barn. When I found this there, I thought, well, I was looking for something bizarre to read. I was looking for something unique and bizarre, and this was certainly it. I figured this is an interesting title, an interesting thing, being the chronicle of one of the strangest stories ever be rumored about around New York. And I figured, what the hell, why not? This is one of those cases where maybe I should possibly do a little bit more research about writing or like a book before I actually pick it up and buy it, because yeah, I did not have a good time. And I'm not saying this is the worst thing I've ever read, but it's definitely the worst thing that I've read this year so far. I gave this 2 stars, and unfortunately, Mr. Dunleavy, I don't think I will be reading you again if you write Stream of Consciousness, because we're not friends. Which brings me to the last book that I read last month, and we will talk about this rather quickly because this is a book you have heard me talk about already before a couple of times, I think, and that is Fan Service by Rosie Danan. Yes, friends, ladies and germs, I read this for the 3rd time this year. What the fuck is wrong with me? This is a book about people. Flawed people. More flawed people. This is following Alex, who was and still kind of is a huge fan of a certain paranormal werewolf cop show that used to be on the air throughout the aughts, and really big fan of it, really loved it. It really helped her out when she was younger and going through a really rough time. This show was her savior. She loved it so much that she started basically a whole like archive of this series, and she became like the mod of it, the moderator, and she did like the whole thing. And it has now been, the thing's been off the air for years. She hasn't really been on the site in years. One day receives a message because the star of the show has messaged the website looking for help because he thinks he's starting to turn into an actual werewolf, like one that he used to play on the show. The only problem is that Alex already met him before when she was younger, and they had a terrible experience with him, and so she has hated him for years. And now he is asking her, and says he will pay her to help him figure out how to deal with the fact that he is kind of starting to turn into a werewolf. Let the spicy relationship things happen. This, yeah, like I said, this is the 3rd time I've read this year. That is absolutely unheard of for me. Like, I will read books more than once in a year. Not all of the time. It has honestly been a while since I have read a book twice in the same year. I know I've done that not too long ago. But when I was growing up, I would do that a lot. Like, I would read books a couple of times a year. But I don't know if there's ever been a book that I read 3 times in one year. And especially not 3 times in not that many months. Like, I read this for the first time in, March? Then I read it again in April, I think. And then I just read it again in July. What? Love this. I love the fandom aspects of it, the fanfiction aspects, the supernatural, like, show. I was a fan of supernatural shows and romances, paranormal romances. I was all into that. I had a while there where I was reading, like, all types of, like, supernatural paranormal romances. Like, a couple of my friends were really into them, so I was borrowing books from them, you know, like the True Blood, you know, Sookie Stackhouse series, and like, there's a couple other ones. I can't remember what they're called. One of them I think is another vampire one. I just reread a couple of them not that long ago. It's like Elizabeth Taylor, the vampire. Not that Elizabeth Taylor, it's another one. And stuff about like shapeshifters and dragons and werewolves and all this kind of stuff. I ate that shit up because I loved it because they were funny and sexy and just entertaining. I loved that shit. So this, in the veins of like paranormal romance, like this felt like coming home in some ways. I just love it. The banter, the supernatural bits, the spicy bits, all that. I love it. I read a lot of fan fiction when I was younger, so I like that kind of thing. So, fandom stuff, fan fiction stuff, love all of that. But what I've really come to love about this, and maybe eventually I'll do like that whole tabbed highlighted thing with this book, because it's easily becoming like one of the best books I've read in a while, one of the best books I've read this year at least. What I've come to love about this and seek out about this and come back to it is the growth of these characters, the support that they have for each other, the support that others they care about, they have for others, others have for them, the consent in this relationship. Even spicy things are going down, the overall consent, their respect for each other, even when they are maybe not thinking things through before they react or speak, they clear up miscommunications. The spice of this is fantastic. They are flawed people, but they end up growing together. And that is honestly something that I love in romances, and something that I over time, I feel like I've become kind of, because I've been reading romances since I was like probably younger, too young for them. But it's something as a romance connoisseur at this point that I really seek out and love, is that the consent, the respect, the spice, the spiciness overall, and I'm always finding new spice that I really like, but especially that ability to be there for each other and be flawed, but be able to grow together, grow as people, and also grow together. Yeah, I love this. So this was a 5-star yet again, and I absolutely adored it, and this is probably not the last time you're going to hear me talk about this book this year. So yeah, I loved most of what I read last month. Had a really good time. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you read any of these, and yeah, thanks for watching. Thank you for always watching. If you're new here and would like to subscribe, please do so, and I will see you guys in the next video.